All right, we're back. We're moving through the Swiss of the Modern 10K event here at the NRG Season 2 finale weekend. We're going to bring up the Season 2 leaderboard before going down to the match this round. So you can see the top 2 players on this list who are not already qualified are going to lock up slots for the end of your championship. This round, both of our primary opponents are going to be found on this list. We've got Scott Pulera, who you can see is 7th overall, but 4th among the unqualified players, playing against Chris Smith, who's in 11th. So 2 players who have a realistic chance of getting the invite this weekend, battling it out. And especially for Chris Smith's perspective, I mean, he has to pass Scott Pulera to get up there. So you may as well beat him along the way.
Yeah, and I mean, but there's only an 8-point difference there, so that's not going to be too difficult. But as you get lower on that list, you do get to see that a lot of people are a lot more close together.
Mm-hmm. No, they are. Yeah, Jesse Hopkins not making it very competitive for a lot of people by putting up that big lead, but the second slot is looking like it's going to be contested all the way through the weekend. So we'll keep you posted on that. And well, let's go ahead and get down to the match. Scott Pulera versus Chris Smith. Chris Smith normally plays Yawgmoth, still playing Yawgmoth, and Scott Pulera with Living End. So we'll see how this goes. So Living End's interaction with undying creatures.
It does say exile, doesn't it?
It does say exile, I believe. Yeah. So it is. They're not going to come back into play for free. It's going to be the same as anything else.
Exile. Oh no, and then sacrifices all creatures they control. Okay,
oh, it's
so
exile.
that should
It's exile from the graveyard.
from
right?
the graveyard. Yep.
Okay, so it is. So they would stay in play.
Yeah, I think so. I think they would come back, which maybe is a little bit unfortunate for the Living End player, but we'll see if Chris is going to be able to have that many undying creatures out on the field to really have that end up mattering. Because a lot of those undying creatures are not really as big as the things that you're trying to get back with Living End. So in the end, it could potentially just not matter.
Oh, here we go. So the Yawgmoth slander begins. It's not big enough to fight against Living End. Huh? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I'm saying that like Striped Riverwinder is much bigger than Yawgmoth.
Yeah, I suppose. All right. Both of these cards probably just created for, to complete cycles as commons in their respective sets, end up both in, competitive Modern. Who knew? All right, so we have Chris Smith here playing a Ignoble Hierarch in disguise. I think.
What do you mean in disguise?
I mean that's not its normal outfit and coloring and card type shape.
Sketch art.
Yeah. Okay. Well, what you can call it whatever you want. I'm just saying it's making
it's not the default printing.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
All default printings. That's what I'm about.
No wonder you play a lot of online.
Yeah, I don't see all these weird printings. All right, so Wall of Roots joins up. So lots of mana for Chris Smith.
Oh, yeah.
Scott just doing some sideboarding here. This is going to be...
some sideboarding. Some cycling? Yeah. Whoa! In the middle of the game, I don't think that's allowed, Joe.
Hey, yeah. Okay, I may have misspoken there. Give me a break.
It's okay.
All right. So...
I like what this person said. They said it's actually probably more the original art than the default printing. Hello, Microsoft. Welcome. Goodbye, Microsoft.
Okay, I thought that was me if just had that pop up, but yeah. All right. So I'm trying to think this through my head how Chris Smith's developing here. If he has a card advantage combo with that doesn't actually win the game, well, that's not going to be happening right away anyway. Scott Pulera is going to have a Force of Negation here to prevent Eldritch Evolution from bringing Yawgmoth into play.
Pitching a
Shardless Agent, I think.
And I thought it looked like Shardless Agent too.
So this is a spot where a Living End here would be pretty good. Chris Smith would lose 2 Wall Roots, get back Ignoble Hierarch, but not get any... there's no undying stuff drawn, so if it's going to happen, this isn't too bad. However, Chris Smith's deck can definitely recover from losing its creatures all at once. it's not going to be an auto win for Scott Pulera if one of these resolves.
Yeah, I was trying to look, but not look too hard at what's in the sideboard. Not trying to give away what's in hand, though. The moment that you figure out you're playing against Living End, you just kind of always assume that they're taking a look, trying to figure out when exactly is the correct time for them to be able to use that Cascade spell. Misty Rainforest is going to be sacked here. We do know that there is a Shardless Agent in hand, and I believe there's a Violent Outburst as well, so...
Okay, so it probably seems reasonable for Scott to just fire one off right now then, even if he's not getting back an overwhelming force. There are a few creatures in the graveyard. And more importantly, just getting rid of Chris's Wall of Roots here.
Yeah. I appreciate how slowly, actually. I mean, I do and I don't. But we did see a player earlier who was like flipping over cards really fast and then almost flipped over past the card.
Yeah, I was actually
for.
nervous each time.
Yeah.
That was an Indomitable Creativity player, I think. And each time I was like, oh, careful, careful. This time, yeah, no concerns here for Scott Pulera. About Scott Pulera going past Living End, as it was very deliberate there. And actually copied Living End in hand as well.
Not really where you want that to be, but...
Well, if you're only going to draw... If you draw one once in a while, I mean, I'm sure you'll live with it. Ignoble Hierarch comes back into play, so Chris Smith loses 2 mana producers and gains 1. And Scott gets, a couple creatures here. Big flyer and a bigger ground pounder, but Chris Smith may be able to muster some defenses here, especially on the ground. Oh, he's sacrificing Canopyland here. That's a good sign.
I was about to say the same thing. Normally, like, if I'm the Living End player, I'm like, well, I got rid of 2 mana creatures, but like 1 comes back into play. It's not the worst. It's not the best. Just hope that my opponent doesn't have much. And then the moment that you see that Nurturing Peatland get sacrificed, I'd be like, ooh, sweat wiped off the brow. Everything is good. We're attacking with all of our creatures. Let's go.
Yeah, that was less of a redevelopment from Chris Smith than I expected.
All right, looks like Waker of the Waves is going to be cycled here.
So this is the Curator Scry first, and then the Waker mechanic. Pitches Stripe Rewinder, draws a Grief, which goes well with the Living End that was stuck in hand. Okay. And Christmas, like, I'm not showing you my secret tech. Let's go to the sideboard games.
Speaking of secret tech, I am also interested to get a look at both of these players' deck lists and see if there is any secret tech for these different decks. So I'm going to take a look before we actually get to throw it up on screen. But this is kind of a hard deck to have secret tech for because you are so trying to keep your combo intact that a lot of the time you don't get to play a lot of tech cards aside from the like few one-ofs. But with this deck in particular, your few one-ofs are very much taken up by things like Blood Artist and like Geralf's Messenger. So the only thing that I'm really seeing on this list that is maybe different from normal ones, and I don't even know if I would say that, is going to be that Hapatra. So we're really focusing on the sideboard for this matchup.
Okay, so what do we find there? We're playing against Living End. Do we have Graveyard Hate? We do. 3 Leylines.
Those are all coming right in. Unfortunately, Engineered Explosives probably not going to be too great, even though normally you'd want some kind of board wipe thing to work with. Veil of Summer? Maybe if your opponent's playing Grief. I don't know.
I mean, there's Grief. We saw Force of Negation. So there are some other alternatives there. I don't hate it. I mean, I feel like these Living End decks often have counter magic in addition to the Griefs. Let's go ahead and take a look at Scott Pulera's Living End deck.
Wow. 4 Endurance, 4 Subtlety in the sideboard.
All right. Well,
a lot of artifact and enchantment hate too. So you have to assume maybe that your opponent is bringing in something like Leyline, and you're going to answer it by bringing in these Foundation Breakers or these Force of Vigors.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so no real sideboard enablers for the Veil of Summer. There are the Griefs and the Force Negations in the main deck, but nothing really additional. I guess Brazen Borrower bouncing something, but that's not super likely to be relevant. Unless I guess you're bouncing exactly a Leyline of the Void.
Yeah. That's like, well, I mean, okay. Unfortunately, like for this particular matchup, if you do bounce a Leyline of the Void, it's not like crazy for the Golgari Yawgmoth deck to actually recast it. But there are a decent number of decks that do play Leyline of the Void and just not really have a great way to recast it. Unfortunately, this is not one of those cases.
Okay, yep. So nothing too out of the ordinary here. 3 copies of the Living End. You can see the deck list broke there. There was the third one was on the next column on the left. And Chris Smith. I mean, okay, Leylines are obviously a big help here. Is that enough? I mean, if one's in play, it's probably enough. But like you're saying, it is possible that they can be bounced or destroyed by Foundation Breakers.
Mm-hmm. I also think that, like, at some point you're kind of expecting your Leyline to be handled in some way, and so you're really just using it as a way to hopefully have it start off in your opening hand and have it just buy you some time, because you are still a combo deck, and so you don't need to like have a ton of time bought for you, just enough for you to be able to assemble yourself some kind of win.
Right. And definitely starting with it in play, I mean, casting it on, let's say, drawing it and then casting it on turn, even if it's turn 3 off an accelerator, there could already be 3 or 4 creatures in the graveyard at that point. So you really are looking for the free drop opening hand here in Chris Smith's shoes. But both these players experienced. Chris Smith done well several times on the Energy Series this year, and Scott Pulera also high on the leaderboard. And I know a regular in store, an actual local to the Nerd Rage region, not just someone that shows up when we get near their state, as we are in Minneapolis this weekend. I'm sure there are local Minneapolis players that only show up to the 2 events in Minneapolis, which is understandable. But we aren't going to often find those people at the top of the leaderboard like we are the people that travel and really go to a lot of the events.
Well, that's really both of these players, yeah, because we've seen Cris. I think we've actually had Cris on coverage for at least the last 2 events that I commentated, and was playing Yawgmoth for both of them. So understandable that Cris would be undefeated at this point and has a lot of prowess with this deck.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, well, hopefully you're enjoying the coverage here with us at Nerd Rage Gaming. If you want to follow along on the channel, you can be reminded of future events, which we have a full slate for the rest of the year. There are 4 more events coming in Season 3. We'll perhaps bring that up after the match, or real quick right now while Scott is shuffling again on his mulligan. But I can't tell you the whole schedule off the top of my head, but the next event, the October event, is Newark, Ohio. Actually, I was going to try, and I actually think I might have got this. I would get the 4 cities right, but not all the dates. Newark, Ohio, Fort Wayne, Indiana, back in Chicago for our first Pioneer 10K standalone event, and then Louisville, Kentucky to end the year at the showdown with Modern and Pioneer. Okay. Back to the table. I'm sure they're ready by now, or at least ready to take a look in Scott Pulera's case. There is no legacy. There are no standalone legacy events. There is legacy as part of the team events in Season 3, but there are no standalone legacy events.
Wow. So all the people who want to play Legacy have to have friends?
Oh, I know that's a tough ask. I mean, especially if they're, I don't know, maybe are we getting to a point where legacy players are being ostracized, not even from tournaments, but from just having friends? Is that the reality we're living in?
I don't know. Maybe.
Man, that's harsh.
That's how it's feeling.
That is way harsh. If Scott Pulera is going to 5, that's also harsh. At least he's up a game.
Yeah, I was gonna say, at least you're up a game. And honestly, on Living End, I feel like you can afford to mulligan quite a bit. Your deck is not like, most of your cards are just trying to cycle, so like you could have kind of a cobbled together start and still be in a pretty okay place.
Yes, you can. Okay, well, we'll look at the prizes now while Scott Pulera is shuffling up for a 5-card hand. See the money and the points awarded, as well as the 2 finalists will earn invites into the regional championship in November, as well as the winner tomorrow. Which, if you're out pursuing these larger scale events, run through DreamHack and then eventually the Pro Tour, then, well, this is a good place to start. I'm excited personally. Next week, qualifiers for season 2 begin. So that means I get to start playing again as I foolishly
won an event
barred my
and not. Oh
right,
no,
exactly.
what a disaster.
I know. Yeah. But next week, back at it. All right, Scott Pulera found a 5, hopefully. Yes.
Finally, a hand worth keeping, and you don't even have to deal with a turn 0 Leyline.
That's true. That might be worth 2 mulligans.
Honestly, I think it kind of is.
All right, so Ignoble Hierarch again for Chris Smith. At our age, most of our friends are dead or playing Modern. That is a good comment in the chat.
I thought that was really funny.
Normally, I wouldn't bother just rereading that out loud, but for people watching on YouTube later in the future that don't have access to chat, that was sharp. Okay, so here we go. Chris Smith with a Grist to lead things off. Okay. Grist, a card that I feel like it overperforms every single time, which means my evaluations are just wrong, but they keep not changing, and it just keeps being good.
So when is this card not good? I'm confused.
Never. It's always
good. Okay.
It's only not good in my mind. And then every time it gets played, it's good.
Okay. I think like here we maybe wish that it interacted with graveyards a little bit, but at least being able to kind of start things off, make some creatures, and you're kind of just hoping that you can amass enough of a board to pack a bit of a punch and then eventually be able to make some things happen. I don't know, but for Scott, you're definitely probably a little afraid of this, especially after that Malta 5. But again, a lot of your things are going to end up cycling, and you'll be able to figure out what different cards you want in your hand eventually here.
Yeah. Not to mention, 2 Strangleroot Geists just got milled over by the Grist. That's nice for Living End.
Oh, yeah. Well, nice for Chris Smith if a Living End gets played.
Yeah. Not nice for Living End deck. It's nice for, wow, there's a Yawgmoth. So now Living End is not going to effectively do much because Yawgmoth can sacrifice everything else and bring it right back. No 1-mana cycler for Scott Pulera. Here with a Waker on turn 2. Choosing between... Wow.
Yeah, this kind of sucks because a Living End is one of them. One of them is going to go into it's either going to go in the graveyard or your hand, which is not where you want it to be either time.
Yeah, no, I don't think he wanted either one of those cards. Oh, I see. There we go. Okay, well, I guess he didn't. So Curator gets pitched, exiled to throw Yawgmoth back, but so now we know the Yawgmoth's there, and there's 2 Undying creatures in the graveyard. So a Living End plus a land for Chris Smith is infinite card draw already.
And this Grist is just going to continue to go crazy, go wild, make more little insects.
Yeah, attack for 2.
For 2.
Yeah.
Punchy little bug.
All right, so Chris Smith develops his board while Becky makes enemies in the chat. All right.
Well. No, I'm making friends in the chat, I think. Maybe I'm misinterpreting that. this is why everyone actually ends up hating me. It's because I think that I'm friends with people when in reality I was making enemies with them, according to them. Okay, so I do also like taking a look at our like complete segue off of I don't want to think about people hating me for too long, bad for the mental. So looking at the metagame as Cris finishes his turn here, Golgari Yawgmoth is actually the 4th most represented deck in the metagame here, which is quite impressive, actually, especially considering we just talked to Ashlyn, and Ashlyn was a little bit too worried about registering a lot of mana creatures in an event like this.
That's a good point. All right, so sizable attack comes across here. Scott, Chris Smith may not even have to worry about comboing this game. The combo is just Grist and a few other things.
And creatures.
Yeah. Which is a great position to be in. Facing down a deck all the Living End deck really is going to be doing here is just casting Living End, and Cris is very well set up to deal with that.
Mm-hmm. And speaking of, Grist kind of ticking up in loyalty there. When does Grist do ultimating? It's actually -5, which is not bad. I mean, we could pretty much do it at any point, and considering that you have an opponent that's putting a lot of things into the graveyard, there might be enough things in the graveyard to basically kill Scott Pulera on the next turn with that ultimate.
Well, yeah, and plus, Cris can sacrifice some of his own creatures when he wants to add on. He's got, I think there's 2 or 3 creatures in the graveyard right now. I'm not sure, but there's 3 more in play that can go in there. So that's at least 5, if not 6. And Scott's life total is already at 9 and dropping from the attack. That looks like 7 power on the board right now. Strangleroot Geist can sacrifice and grow, oddly enough.
Yeah, when do we attack with all these insects? Get the Strangleroot Geist back. All right, there's a Violent Outburst in hand, and is that going to have to be the play to kind of fog the turn?
Yeah, yes it is. You're right about that. So this game isn't over yet.
All right.
But Cris Smith is certainly going to draw a few new cards.
Did actually end up bringing in the Brazen Borrowers as we were able, or the singular Brazen Borrower into the deck. We know that Cris is going to take a look as well, and does also highlight that Brazen Borrower, being like, okay, interesting, good to know.
Yeah, and Colossal Skyturtle there. We don't see that in every list nowadays, but we do see it here. It's definitely present in a decent number of them.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, dear. And there's an Endurance. And Scott Pulera is
yikes
going to be done with this game.
All right, so a multi-5 and getting a little bit of a beatdown from some sideboard cards like that Endurance is going to be more than enough for Living End to pack in that second game, but
yeah, still, I mean, still play, chances in game 3. Cris Smith, dominating performance that game, didn't even need a Leyline, but yeah, your opponent's short on cards like that. And then Endurance is obviously great interaction for the matchup. I mean, not only does your opponent not bring anything back, but you also get to bring your stuff back still if you want to. I mean, you could sack all your... Basically, I think you just lose Yawgmoth. I don't think Yawgmoth can sacrifice itself, right? So you lose Yawgmoth and keep everything else, and they all convert into cards. Yeah, this is brutal.
It does say another creature, so it cannot sacrifice itself.
Brutal for Scott Pulera here without... a better start, a better setup there.
And for it to have just been so solidified by that Endurance, definitely a little bit of a ouch moment.
Yeah, that was kind of a beating. We've seen a few of those today when players multi-5. That's nothing really.
Yeah, I would expect the Living End deck to be a little more resilient to a multi-5 than most other decks. Like, you see Burn multi-5 and you're just like, yikes, that hurts. Anytime you're mulling below 7, I feel like it really hurts for Burn unless you're looking for a very specific sideboard card. And I feel like that's the case with a lot of these decks, but for a deck that has mostly creatures that just say cycle, I wouldn't think that Living End would be that hurt by it. But, I mean, if you're not seeing the right cards, you're not seeing the right cards. And there's just nothing you can really do about it. That's a part of the variance of the game.
Right. No, but you're absolutely right. I mean, if it's something like cycle turn 1, cycle a couple more times, or Waker of Waves, and then bring everything back, you didn't lose out on anything by not having more cards in hand, because you used. I mean, even if your hand is 3 land 1 cycler and Charlotte's Agent, you can cycle the 1 cycler into 2 more, and still you weren't really costing yourself anything. So we'll see. Game 3 coming. I'm sure Scott Pulera would like to dodge this issue by just keeping 7.
Mm-hmm.
But we'll see if that's how things roll.
Yeah, and for those asking, Cris runs 2 endurance in the main, none in the sideboard, at least that we can see, and that would be on screen for those who are going to be watching on YouTube later. And if you're ever concerned about missing coverage or missing YouTube, you should check us out on YouTube, and you should follow the channel so that you make sure that you never miss some paper magic goodness that energy is bringing your way.
That's right. Listen to Becky. She knows what she's talking about. All right, so Chris Smith returns a favor. An honorable man decides, you know what? I had a perfect 7 there. Turn 2 kill with discard protection, but you mulliganed twice last game. I'm going to mulligan this game.
Chris's hand was not that good last game, but it was pretty good. Just didn't well, I guess if you consider that the Grist kind of did win Chris that game, maybe Chris did win on turn 2.
No, he's got the secret, cobbled together spirit guide nonsense into, I don't know.
Spirit guide isn't even legal anymore.
I guess.
You guess? Turn 2 Grist was in fact pretty good, and Chris did use that to take down that game number 2. Scott Pulera will be on the draw for this 3rd game, and Chris is going to take at least a 1 mulligan here and hope for a better one.
Really?
Right? What? Scott's
on the draw?
No, Scott's on the play. Sorry.
Oh, okay. I thought you had information. I was like, wow, really?
No. Sorry, I just misspoke then.
That's okay. That's forgivable.
What is that card?
I mean, I wouldn't forgive people for it, except I keep doing it. So, whoa!
I was gonna say, yeah, I think that was 1 Leyline, potentially 2. So I mean, Force of Vigor just is not gonna care. So we better hope that those were something that came in for Scott Pulera.
Yeah. Okay. Well, Street Wraith cycles into exile.
Yeah, you could see that Scott was kind of thinking, do I still do this?
Mm-hmm. Well, if there was a force in the hand, it would have preempted all this cycling. So we know, and Chris knows that Scott doesn't have one yet, at least.
Or doesn't have a green card.
Well, I suppose that's possible too. We'll see if he's able to get rolling here. So, okay, here's a Grief pitching a Living End, which is effectively worthless in hand. So we need 2 copies of some combination of Foundation Breaker, Colossal Skyturtle, or
Brazen Borrower.
Or Brazen Borrower, right. Thank you.
But there's only 1 copy of Brazen Borrower in the side, so we are kind of relying on a lot of those.
There's one main also, I think.
Oh, there's... Hold up, I will check. You're correct. 1 copy, main, 1 side.
All right, so there's probably someone in the neighborhood of like 6 or 7 cards, and Scott needs 2 of them.
Yeah, there's Boseiju in the sideboard as well.
Okay. All right. So
there's pieces.
It's
you
possible.
can also Otawara. So again, there's things. There's hope on the horizon for Scott Pulera.
There's hope. And did we keep a 1-land hand because of the ley lines? I mean, that's understandable, but I think that's what happened.
We'll see if that ends up.
Let's go. Hardcast Curator of Mysteries.
Honestly, we might get there. It does have a Brazen Borrower in hand. Unfortunately, just 1 Brazen Borrower isn't really enough.
Well, I thought part of the issue with Brazen Borrower is that, you know, Cris is playing deck and just recast the Leylines, but you can't do that with one land, so. Oh, no third land for Scott. So both players. Okay, now we're even up on mana here, and a 1/1 for Chris.
What
Smith.
an exhilarating but yet unexhilarating game.
Yeah, and as usual, we have Yawgmoth powerhouse dominating the board.
Let's go, Yawgmoth. I'm a part of the Yawgmoth fan club.
I know.
I'm pretty sure that actually last month I called it Mopey, so
yeah,
I don't know.
Well, 1 power is enough to I mean, it's 18 turns remaining for Scott Pulera here. Gotta do some work. There's an endurance in hand. That actually allows him to get on the board. Also could hard cast Brazen Borrower now.
Yeah, do you try to use the front side of Brazen Borrower before hard casting the other side, though?
Possibly. I believe he saw Veil of Summer in Chris's hand on that grief. So yeah, you're right. He definitely doesn't want to run into that, although it's not available now anyway. But here's the endurance. Okay, so 2 cards back in Chris Smith's deck. No graveyards for anybody.
Endurance starting to get punchy.
Okay, land here. So subtlety now able to be cast. All right, life totals being updated here. A little bit lower than we thought on both sides. But Chris Smith at 14 here with I mean, attackers at the ready for Scott Pulera. Bunch of flash creatures here, and a Violent Outburst to potentially pump through for extra damage.
Oh.
I don't know. I think I might say Scott Pulera looks favored at this point.
Yeah, now that we've been able to hit our land drops and actually be able to cast some of these bigger creatures, I am inclined to agree. But with enough little mana creatures, we're starting to really ramp up on Chris's side as well.
Yeah, that's certainly irritating for Scott. When Chris plays a creature, you've got subtlety in your hand, and Chris is stuck on mana, and you still don't want to burn it on the Ignoble Hierarch.
Yeah.
He's not going to.
Oh, all right. Are we just playing it?
Yep.
All right, let's start to attack. The Birds of Paradise. 0-1. Not going to be doing a whole lot against Brazen Borrower.
Birds of Paradise 0-1. My first ever PTQ win.
Oh, did you lose to a pumped up Birds of Paradise?
No, I won with Birds of Paradise. I had 18-19 Birds of Paradise.
Oh, whoa. Okay.
Yeah. Ancestral Mask.
Won with one.
Ancestral Mask, baby. That was awesome. I mean, that deck probably sucked, but so did everyone else back then, so it was enough.
Yeah, power creep, as they say.
Yeah. All right, 6 across here. Chris Smith, I mean, is going to have to start jump blocking. Well, Yawgmoth jump blocking is...
If I'm going to have a chump blocker, I want it to be a Yawgmoth every time.
Exactly.
Yawgmoth. Oh, Yawgmoth subtlety.
Oh, you know what? And not only does he have to... this Violent Outburst Trumpet Blast effect is actually what allow the Flyers to win. So the Birds of Paradise we have to block as well. There's a cycled Veil of Summer, I think. Yeah. So Yawgmoth's going to block Endurance. Bird has to block also. And even then, Chris is going to have a lot of life to play with. Here's an attack. It's got Pulera trying to get to 5-0 here.
He's cobbling it together through 2 Leylines.
Looks like Chris is aware of the danger here and just deciding whether he can win without this Bird of Paradise. I imagine if he decides he can win without it, then he'll block anyway.
This is a moment where chat is also saying that Birds of Paradise should be tapped, and I do think that they're right. But it doesn't matter because we didn't block with the bird anyway, and Violent Outburst finds the last bit of damage.
Okay.
So thankfully, it doesn't matter. But I do believe chat is right, and the bird should have been tapped to pay for Veil unless the Ignoble Hierarch was tapped for it. But I think we tapped the Ignoble Hierarch for Yawgmoth.
Oh, yeah, I mean, I agree that Yawgmoth was played that turn, and Veil is 1, 2, 3. Okay, unless there's a buried land there, then maybe you're right.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway,
doesn't end up mattering.
Yep, Violent Outburst takes it down. Its intended form of +2 damage is enough. And yeah, Scott Pulera advances to 5-0. Chris Smith still very much in the running at 4-1. All right, sounds like we're gonna have an interview, and I guess we'll wait for. I assume we're talking to Scott Pulera, but all right. Yeah. Okay. So 5-0 in an 8-round Swiss event. One more win probably locks up the ability to draw in. Although, at least in the RCQs I've been playing in or had been playing in, there had been less of that recently than in years past. There was more of playing for seeding because the modified play draw rules finally, been around long enough. People have put enough thought into it. Like, you know what? Going first is good. Maybe I want to keep playing. Maybe I don't want to draw.
And there were so many situations where I know that like a lot of players would be like, yeah, as you mentioned, locked up. So you might as well, like, even if a loss gets you in, just like try to go for it.
Yeah. I mean, there's always like, well, the person you're playing against is going to feel bad about it. They'd rather draw in, but like sometimes, but you know what? Especially in single slot qualifiers or even larger events too. I mean, it's, we all didn't come here to almost win. We came here to try and win. So we may as well go for it. All right. We are waiting on Chris. Let's go ahead and put up the season 2 leaderboard so we can, I'm sorry, we're waiting on Scott, but so we can see where we're at on there. And it just occurred to me that asking for anything from production right now might have been a mistake because they're probably setting up the interview. So
yep. We can talk about something for a sec.
Wow. You can see why we pay Becky the big bucks.
Okay, no. I do have a question. This is kind of related to. Oh, okay, never mind. We're gonna go to the interview. I'll save my question for down the road.
All right, Scott.
Hi.
Let's get the name updated on there. Okay, so 5-0 with Living End.
Yep.
Feeling pretty good. What's your thoughts so far? What's how do you feel about the deck?
I think it's pretty cool. I'm hoping to not play against a lot of 4-color. I haven't so far. I just squeaked by with a really weird game versus Yawgmoth.
Yeah, we saw
that one.
Yeah, I mean, you generally when you draw up your plans, you're thinking, okay, if my opponent starts on double Leyline, I do this, right? And then just
yeah, it's weird because I wasn't bringing in Foundation Breaker or Force of Vigor in the dark against them. It's weird. Game 2, I was hoping maybe I would see if he had like Necromentia or whatever, but I didn't. And then I just had the Borrowers and obviously the Endurances and stuff. And yeah, like I said, this is the first game that I had like a crazy weird game where I just have to play the stupid flyers and like get the points through with like outbursts for just getting there. It's very strange.
Hey, like, you do what you can do. You make it work, and you certainly made it work. And yeah, we had a lot of people kind of debating. We were like, oh, this is maybe potentially bad if you did bring Force of Vigor in because they did just immediately drop both of the ley lines.
Right, yeah, it's the perfect number two for the ley line.
Yeah, so that could have potentially been disastrous, but you didn't bring them in. And do you regret not bringing them in, or are you just so sold on this was my thought process? I don't bring them in unless I see something that warrants it.
Yeah, I'd probably wait to see something. I think I should probably bring in Boseiju in the dark just because it's like low opportunity cost, even if it's bad, since it can be the answer. So I probably should have brought that in regardless. But yeah, I mean, otherwise it's like the pair of Borrowers, and then you just have all the flash creatures that you want anyways. You want Endurance to like clear their graveyards you can actually living in, or like stop them from doing their stuff. And like I want a bunch of subtleties anyway, so the games can play out like how they did. I just assume that's like still not common.
So when the Ignoble Hierarch came down and you had the subtlety in your hand, was there any consideration to playing it there? Okay.
So I assumed I was probably just going to Borrower and then try to time walk them and do it again. But then as soon as I said it resolved, I was like, no, I probably should have subtlety because it's just a quicker clock, and then I can use the Borrower again in like similar fashion or just flash it in. And then like just enough time had passed that I was like, no, I said it resolved, and I was like, and in my head I was like, yeah, I think that was a misplay. I probably should have just top decked it.
I mean, it worked out well. I mean, you
Yeah,
managed to
luckily.
settle to. I mean, it worked out great. So how often do you win games like that are kind of not exactly on plan where you're living in? Is this something that happens 10% of the time?
I really couldn't
2% of
give
the
you a
time?
number because I played this deck just a little bit on Moto this week. I've like not played Living End before really, so I
Okay.
don't know how much. I mean, it happened round 1 and round 4 so far.
Okay.
The other games have been like kind of fairly normal. Like I do my thing or they completely stop me.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
I
So
mean,
we've been talking about the leaderboard today,
great.
season 2. You got some work to do, but obviously
Yeah.
5-0, good start here. Like, is that something that's kind of? Is this just how much of that is that on your mind this weekend?
A good amount. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, hopefully not such an amount that it like influences my player decisions or anything, but like it's definitely on there because like I think I'm like 7 behind Duke.
All right. So let's go ahead and
That's
bring it.
definitely why I like definitely for sure came to this.
Yeah. No, I mean, you certainly got a good shot, and you certainly have started out pretty well here.
Yeah, can't
So, we were also now. Does the RC invite mean anything to you, or are you already covered there?
I'm covered. Yeah, I
Oh,
won
okay.
one a while
So
ago.
we were talking before about, so you're 5-0, 8-round Swiss event, one more round, most likely with a win, you can most likely double draw in.
Right.
Is this a scenario where, okay, you want to try and put some distance on Dubin? Do you think you would play another round and try and lock up a high seed, or you just take the safe draw into the middle section of the top 8? You have any thoughts on that?
I would probably just go for the draws. I think it's
Yeah.
pretty reasonable to go for the play. I don't know like, 100% on like what is all near the top because I don't know if like, let's say it's like literally all 4 color. If it's literally all 4 color, I'd definitely be like, no, I'm definitely going to draw.
Mhm.
I don't know. I'd have to see some matchups and have a lot of info I don't have to like confidently want to try
Sure.
to Dream Crush because it's like such a downside for me. Like if
Mhm.
I miss, because
Yeah.
I need the points since I'm behind him.
Right. All right. Well, hopefully we'll see you maybe later this evening, but maybe tomorrow morning,
Yep, hopefully.
playing it out and trying to make this an exciting race. Good luck the rest of the way.
Thanks.
All right, 5 rounds in the books. We've got one more with Becky coming up, round number 6, and then Drake will be back for the evening. So stick around. No Rage Gaming. We'll be right back.